Welcome to Commander's Comment, a monthly discussion about the issues and projects of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, issues and comments that impact our members and our fellow Americans. I'm Walter D. Donnie Kennedy, Chief of Heritage Operation for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. I'm here today with Commander Paul Gramling Jr. and we'll be discussing in the next few minutes these issues. Paul, first, before we get started, tell us a little bit about the Sons of Confederate Veterans.
Well, in the mid-90s, Donnie, the Confederate Veterans, they had their reunions every year. So the mid-1890s, they realized that they're not going to be around forever. And they was looking to their sons to help tell their story. So in 1896, the United Sons of Confederate Veterans was organized with the blessings of the Confederate veterans themselves. So that's how we started, and our mission was to tell the story of the Confederate veterans, why they fought, and their causes and what have you.
Well, that's great, Commander. Now, tell us a little bit about Paul Gramling, because you're now the newly elected Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, and I know our membership probably knows who you are, but a lot of people watching this may not be members, so who is Paul Gramling Jr.?
I was born in,
Go ahead and say it. I want to get this out in public.
we're going to get that. I was born in Corning, New York.
New York.
But I was born to a Southern mother.
Great.
But was up there for a couple of years. Then my parents moved to Louisiana, which is where my mother was from. I had another brother that was born in New York, and my youngest born in Louisiana. But I was raised in Shreveport, Louisiana. So I've been there since 1960. So I got involved with SCV and reenacting. Actually, I got involved with reenacting first. Quote unquote Civil War reenacting. We don't use that word very much, but we use that as far as reenactors are concerned. But I got involved in reenacting from some friends of mine I work with at the post office, which I am a retiree of after 30 years. But they got me involved in reenacting, and then they got me involved in the Sons of Confederate Veterans. So I spent several months working on my genealogy and was able to join the General Richard Taylor camp in Shreveport. Been a member of that camp since the spring of 1991. Since that time, I've served in various positions, from camp adjutant to camp commander to division, lieutenant commanders, division commanders, Army commanders, Chief of Heritage Defense, Army Trans Mississippi Councilman, and just recently I served my term as Lieutenant Commander-in-Chief. And this past July in Franklin, Tennessee, I was voted and elected to Commander-in-Chief.
Well, that's wonderful. Now, you mentioned the term camp, and I want to just go on for our non-initiated members or people who are watching us. Our local units we refer to not as chapters but as camps.
Correct.
And this reflects back to the old Confederate
Correct.
veterans who had their quote encampments
Yes.
at their meetings. So that's why you'll hear I'm a member of such and such camp.
Exactly.
But it's just a local chapter, a
Right.
local meeting. Well, that's great. One thing I want to ask you also is that at most of these SCV meetings, now when I say SCV, that is of course referring to Sons of Confederate Veterans. That's just our shorthand for Sons of Confederate Veterans. At most of our SCV meetings, at our camp meetings, you'll hear something called the charge, and it is often repeated at the beginning of each camp meeting. Exactly what is the charge, Paul?
Well, as I stated earlier, the Sons of Confederate Veterans, which was at the time called United Sons of Confederate Veterans, when it was established and organized in 1896. 10 years later, in New Orleans, when there was a convention, the United Confederate Veterans and the United Sons of Confederate Veterans in reunion in New Orleans, General Stephen D. Lee, who was in charge, Commander-in-Chief of the United Confederate Veterans at the time, he gave a speech to the sons and daughters, actually, that were there together in New Orleans. And he gave them what we call our charge. And that charge, and part of that charge reads, "To you, Sons of Confederate Veterans, we submit the vindication of the cause for which we fought. To your strength will be given the defense of the Confederate soldier's good name, the guardianship of his history, the emulation of his virtues, and the perpetuation of those principles loved and that you loved and which you also cherish. So this is our creed, if you will, of what we do as sons of Confederate veterans, as descendants of those Confederate veterans. And about a year ago, we came up with a statement of purpose,
Yes.
if you will, for the Sons of Confederate Veterans. So a lot of people that are not members, men and women, especially men that are not members, they don't understand the charge and what the Sons of Confederate Veterans is about. So we come up with a statement of purpose for the public,
The
if you will.
uninitiated.
Yes, and that statement goes like this. This would be the mission statement for all current and future members of the Sons of Confederate Veterans, organized as defined within the Constitution, Preamble, SCV Constitution, July 19, 2013. We, the Sons of Confederate Veterans, having been commissioned by the Confederate veterans themselves, retain our responsibility and right to adhere to the founding principles of the United States of America, remembering the bravery, defending the honor, and protecting the memory of our beloved Confederate veterans, which includes their memorials, images, symbols, monuments, and grave sites for ourselves and future generations.
Absolutely. I noticed in that statement that you talk about the founding principles of these United States.
Exactly.
Because after all, as we often say in the Sons of Confederate Veterans, that our Confederate forefathers were in 1861 fighting for exactly the same thing that our colonial forefathers were fighting for in 1776. The South was right because originally America was right. I'm glad you read
Correct.
that statement, Commander. You know, Paul, in this toxic, politically correct environment that we live in, today it's almost, if you're mentioning anything Southern, or if you're proud of your Southern past, your history, or symbols, you're automatically accused of being a, quote, racist organization or a white supremacist organization. Does the Sons of Confederate Veterans have a statement of fact of how we stand on this issue of racism and white supremacy?
As a matter of fact, we do. I believe it was around 1987. It was passed in convention, and it's part of our Constitution that we have nothing to do with or anything to do with any kind of racist group or entity, and we have no association with those groups, because you have to understand a lot of our problems, like you said, people view anything with the Confederate flag and our organization as being this racist group over here. And unfortunately, we tried and went into litigation when hate groups started using our symbol, the Confederate flag. We went into litigation to try to stop that from happening. Unfortunately, we did not have a copyright on that flag, and the courts ruled against us. So unfortunately,
and that was federal court.
Exactly, that was the federal court. And so unfortunately, if a group is racist and whatever their intentions are, they can use whatever symbols they want. If they use our beloved battle flag, we can't stop them. But we can put in our Constitution, which we did, that we would have nothing to do with these organizations, and if any of our members are found out to be part of those organizations, they are no longer a member in the Sons of Confederate Veterans.
As a matter of fact, you may remember in the camp that I belonged to in North Louisiana, we expelled a member once we discovered that he was a member of a racist organization. Our membership voted 98% to expel him. Now, he was given a chance. You could be a member of this or that, but you can't be a member of both.
Correct.
So our organization, not only have we literally taken a stand in writing, but in actuality, and our camp is not the only one that has done this, and that individual that was expelled cannot be a member of the SCV in any state or nation. As a matter of fact, Paul, We are an international organization,
We are.
are we not?
We have camps in the UK, we have camps in Australia, we even have, it's part of the United States, but we even have a camp in Hawaii now.
Yeah.
We have several members down in Brazil, South
Absolutely.
America.
Yeah.
So we are an international organization that reaches out all over the globe.
Well, that brings me to another statement or question, really. Is this an all-white organization?
Absolutely not,
And why is that?
because there were several races, creeds, religions that fought for the South, that fought for the Confederacy. So if you've got several races and groups of people that fought for Southern independence, it's not a stretch to understand that you're going to have descendants of those men
Yeah.
that could belong to the Sons of Confederate Veterans, which we do. We have men of Asian descent, African descent, with Jewish, just whatever,
Native
everything.
American,
Native American,
Hispanic.
We had, you had a Native American, or what we call an Indian,
Yes.
general.
The last
Yes,
one to surrender.
Exactly, Stanwadi,
Of Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
So we are a very diverse group.
You could actually say diversity is our strength.
It is.
We'll just borrow that from the liberals.
Exactly. The Confederate Army was probably the first multicultural army.
Absolutely. And with the African American, we had both slave and free
Yes.
men of color. And
Yes.
that is, a lot of people, when you tell them that, they say, well, why would they fight in an army that believes in slavery? You have to remember, during the War for American Independence, slave and free fought for the
Exactly.
American side.
Exactly.
So it's a tradition in our history, and it's a proud tradition, so we're not ashamed of our past.
Right.
Paul, the news media delights in showing monuments being pulled down by radical neo-Marxist groups. We've seen it with Silent Sam in North Carolina here recently. Other places where flags have been torn down, monuments desecrated all across the South. But tell us, is that the only story, or are there monuments and flags going up that maybe people don't know about?
There's a lot of news here that the media will not report, and that is of course, we have probably about 30 what we call mega flags, which is
Mega flags.
80-foot flag poles
Now
with
say that again, how tall are
80
these?
foot
Wow.
and higher, up to 120 foot
Right.
flag poles along interstates and major highways that fly, up to 30 by 50 foot flags.
Wow.
We have about 30 of those Confederation wide.
Yeah.
And even smaller flagpoles, like 35, 40 foot.
60
We-
foot, yeah.
Yeah, we have up to probably 40
Yeah.
of those,
Right.
around the Confederation.
Well, what about monuments? Do we have any new monuments? Do we hear about monuments
Yeah.
coming down? Do we have
Yeah.
any monuments coming up?
We are seeing an insurgence of small monuments that are being put up. I know there's some in Alabama, as well as
Kentucky.
Kentucky and other states, what we call divisions,
Right.
that they are putting these little monuments. I think they stand like 6 foot tall,
Right.
and they put them on a pedestal.
Right.
Excellent looking monuments
Absolutely.
of a Confederate soldier. So those are going up. But what a lot of people don't understand, you see a few monuments being torn down or removed, but that's just a very few that the media reports on. What you don't hear about is the 1,100 plus monuments and statues that are still in place.
Right.
That Southerners and members of the SEV and other Southern organizations have fought to keep them right where they are, and they're there.
And Paul, we're shooting this film in Mississippi. I can drive about 50, not even 40 miles from this position we're in now, and I can take you to a monument there that was raised by the effort of black legislators in Mississippi. It's standing in front of what used to be the Capitol. We call it the old Capitol and old Archives State building in Jackson, Mississippi. Confederate veterans who were black Confederate veterans, John Harris from, I believe it was Washington County in Mississippi. He stood on the floor of the Mississippi legislature and told the white Democrats, I too wore the gray, the same color my master wore, and if that war had gone on to this day, we would have still been there. He was proud of being a Confederate veteran, and that monument was raised in honor of all Confederate veterans, including the African American slave and free, the Native American. Mississippi had a large contingent of Choctaw Native Americans in this war. Right. So it was to all of them, not to just few. And anyone who thinks that monument is a monument to white supremacy, they are either willfully ignorant or just too dumb to know, is all I can think.
Well, I get into conversations with people who don't understand the fact of all the black Confederates that fought. And I've got a portfolio of a lot of black soldiers that did fight.
Absolutely.
And when I have a discussion, whether they're white, black, it doesn't matter. When in the discussion, I'll pull this out and I said, you see these men here? I said, these men of color fought for that battle flag just like my ancestors did. I honor them as much as I honor my own.
And the interesting thing was, we talked about the old Confederate veterans, who are the ones that are responsible for our organization getting its roots and getting started. They had their reunion, and guess what? Those black Confederate veterans was right there, sitting right next to their white counterparts. Racism was not known back then with those men. Now, true, their children, they inherited something because of Reconstruction, but those men, they were black and white second because they were Confederates first. And that's the way we ought to feel today. If we could have that same sense ourselves, racism would be destroyed totally.
They were brothers in arms.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the gentlemen that you see in the old pictures of the reunions where you had the black Confederates there, and people that I have discussions with about the blacks or minorities that fought for the South, and they say, well, they were forced to fight, which is ludicrous. But I tell them, I said, well, if you believe that, then tell me why, if they were forced to fight, why they would show up at reunions wearing all their pins and medals.
Absolutely.
They was there because they were part of them. They were brothers in arms.
Paul, I live close to a place called Minden, Louisiana, and right close to Minden, there's a cemetery there with a lieutenant, he may have been a captain, a Hispanic officer who was killed at the Battle of Mansfield. There's a Hispanic, and there's a lot of Hispanics that fought for the South. So again, it's just pointing out we were a very diverse group of people. These Confederate monuments, that Confederate flag, it represents a diversity of people who were, as you said, a band of brothers. We are still a band of brothers, even if we don't fully understand it. Paul, you were elected Commander-in-Chief here recently with one of your game plans was to start a Southern Victory campaign. What is the focus of this campaign that you're talking about, a Southern Victory campaign? What's the idea behind it, and what are we going to see?
For several years, at least for the past 3 decades, we have let our voice be taken away from the media, special interest groups, even the politicians, and we have not had that voice to put the truth out there, to let them know why our ancestors fought, why the Confederacy was what it was and why it was. And we have lost that voice over the past 30 years. And unfortunately, in our recent past, it's getting even more difficult for us to put our word out there and put the message out there because of the media controlling the narrative.
Media bias?
Yes, exactly. The media bias. And even if you try to go on any interviews with the media, national, something a lot of times local, you cannot articulate your position on why the Confederacy was, why our ancestors fought, in 15-second sound bites. You can't do it. I don't care how good you are at articulating our stance, you can't do that. And then after the interview's over, they get the last word. There's no rebuttal. So what I am striving to do as Commander-in-Chief and working with you, is I'm ready, we're ready to take back the narrative.
Hear, hear.
We want to control the narrative. You know, we will put it out on the media that will reach people and let people understand and know what the Sons of Confederate Veterans is all about. Let them know our cause, our fight, and that is to protect, uphold the good name of the Confederate soldier.
Good. And one of the ways we're going to do this, Paul, is as we talked about before, Radio Free Dixie. The people out there are going to start hearing positive information about the South, the Confederacy, their Confederate ancestors. Enough of this negative narrative. You know, President Trump talks about the fake news. Well, fake news is a problem, but we in the Sons of Confederate Veterans, we have trouble with fake history.
Yes.
Fake history. And fake history is teaching black people to hate white people because of the narrative is so incorrect. It's politically correct, but it's historically incorrect. What you're hearing Paul and myself talk about is bringing people together, uniting them together to celebrate a common cause, a common history. And the interesting thing about this, we are defending Southern history, Confederate history, but more importantly, we're defending American history. Paul, you was recently speaking to the Sons of Union Veterans. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, a few weeks ago, I was at the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War encampment in Boston, Massachusetts. Every year, their Commander-in-Chief attends our reunion to bring greetings, and our Commander-in-Chief of the SCV goes to theirs. When we go to their encampment, it's a little more involved. You don't just bring greetings, you're actually one of their speakers and at their banquet. So I had the opportunity to speak to them at their banquet on the Saturday night banquet. And I was able to let them know that as two organizations, there are things that we will always disagree. And we take those things and we put them over here. We don't concentrate on those. These things that we do agree on, like monuments and our symbols, those things we can agree on, and we are going to help one another. We help each other fight against a common enemy,
Right.
A common enemy which is bent on the destruction of the moral fabric of this country.
Amen. That's correct.
And I had the opportunity to speak to about 300 there in Boston, and I was well received. They treated us great. They even played Dixie for us.
Well, great.
Yes, so it was a good experience. I know, some of our people are not real crazy about us being there, but they are people that are an ally right now.
Right, I think they understand, like people out there must understand this. The attack against the South, this is an attack, the neo-Marxists, the radical leftists, they see the Confederacy and the South as the low-hanging fruit. If they can sully the South, if they can muddy up the waters with the false narrative of racism and slavery and condemn the South and pull Robert E. Lee off his pedestal, the next thing they're going to pull down is George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry. And these Union veterans, they understand that their monuments are subject also because they too will be sullied by eventually the liberal, the progressive, the neo-Marxists. They want to sully everything of traditional value in America, whether your daughter goes to a same-sex bathroom or whether you get to fly the Christian flag. Remember, if the Confederate flag has to come down because it offends somebody, what will offend other people more than the Christian flag? If the Confederate monuments have to come down, well, what about monuments to our Judeo-Christian heritage, such as the Ten Commandments? They will have to come down. The same people that attack Christianity are attacking the Confederates. So we've all got to work together to protect the greater values of traditional America.
And the men that were in Boston that weekend are well aware that if they succeed in eradicating all Confederate symbols, they are next.
Absolutely.
And they're already seeing that now.
Yes.
You see, like even Andrew Jackson in New Orleans, They're trying to take that monument down. They even vandalized Joan of Arc.
Of all things.
You know, so they understand that this is an American attack.
Absolutely. Traditional value in America will be lost.
Yes.
Well, Paul, I really enjoyed this. This is the first of many, I hope to come, Commander's Comments, where we will be monthly talking to Commander Paul Gramling Jr. about what's going on in the SCV, things coming up, and things that's happened in the past. And we look forward to seeing each of you again next go around on Commander's Comment. I'm Walter D. Kennedy with the Sons of Confederate Veterans. God bless the South, and God save America.